Chapter 24. 5 Magicians. Katal-Takuk, 10,000 years ago. Enkidu stands outside the city's rear gates as the remaining Sakari officers approach. Blood drenches his face, arms, and chest. Behind him, the gathered magicians stand around the dimensional fissure and prepare to begin the ritual spell to close the portal. I must stand firm. I cannot falter. The demons cannot be allowed past me. I am the only line of defense. You have repeatedly told me not to underestimate the power of Levant magic. Now is the moment that we require 7 magicians, and yet you still have not shared with us why you are still confident in our victory, Fausto says, confronting Refugio. Refugio begins to chant a series of unfamiliar incantations. A glow envelopes Inyana, and she is moved to stand with them, bound by mystical chains. She is a self-proclaimed magician. I have read the spell over many times, and understand that only one magician, the one doing the chant, must be a willing participant. The other 6 magicians serve only as magical conduits, Refugio says. We still require one more, Fausto adds. Refugio smiles and pulls out a folded parchment from his robe. He whispers to the paper and sets it aflame. The ground beside him trembles as the ashes spur an artificial being to growth. Pallid and naked, void of any sexual organs or body hair. My spiritual energy is contained within this doll. It will serve as our 7th. Release me, Inyana screams, tugging at the chains. You could not restrain her before. How are you sure this will work? Simeon asks. Battle has significantly weakened her. At full strength, I could not hope to bind this one, Refugio then reveals several more metallic sealing discs in his robe. And when we are finished, she should be fatigued enough to be able to be imprisoned by one of my spells. Why should we chance her survival and escape? Fausto asks. Why not just behead her when we are finished and be done with it? She has strong magical powers. We may have further use for her. Refugio hands Fausto several of his sealing discs. These may be of use to you. With the proper incantation, one of these creatures should be trapped even if you are too weak yourself to lift a sword. Most of the energy required for the spell is worked into the metal itself. I have spent many years perfecting this technique. The jeweled discs are stronger and contain much more magical energy, he adds, handing Fausto 2 more discs made of gemstones. Yamura and Hui reach the clearing around the portal with a small group of 4 of their soldiers. Kill those magicians. The humans' victory depends on their success, Yamura orders. One of the Sakari releases a burst of energy at the group, but Enkidu darts into the path, cutting the attack in half with his sword. I will not allow you to pass, Enkidu says, holding his sword up in defiance. The Sakari rushes forwards, and Enkidu swiftly dashes through their ranks. Large sprays of blood erupt from the fallen invaders' bodies. A lowly soldier never stood a chance against you. You really are an exceptionally powerful human, Yamura says. Let us show our respect by cutting his damned head off. Hui brings his sword down on Enkidu's blade, driving the tip into the dirt. The Sakari moves his other hand quickly across his body and slashes Enkidu across the chest. Yamura attacks from the side, and Enkidu raises his elbow to block. Hui grins, whipping his sword back around and cutting across Enkidu's ribcage. Enkidu stumbles and manages to block a second slash from Yamura, but takes one down the center of his back from behind. It seems he cannot handle both of us at the same time any longer, Hui says. We have seen the best humanity has to offer. We no longer have anything to fear. Enkidu raises his hand, shaking, and concentrates his energy into his fingertips. Brahmas! Enkidu is stopped abruptly. A deep gash is carved down his chest. Blood explodes outwards as he falls to his back. That attack, Hui says, sheathing his sword, was in Captain Rivius's final report. You see, we knew all along that you were the only real threat in this city. Inyana casts a spell on the scouting party so that everything they witnessed was transmitted back to us in Averno. You have been slowly losing this battle from the moment you first drew your sword upon us. Hui stands on Enkidu's chest and lowers his blade to the warrior's throat. Aginestra! Hui leaps backwards, patting his forearm out with his hand as it catches on fire. You should have not gotten involved, you little pest, Hui says as he glares at Simeon, who stands before him with his palms outstretched. Master Ismail died believing that stopping you at any cost is what we must do. I shall honor his memory and do the same. Enkidu crawls to his feet and pushes the young magician behind him. Leave. I cannot allow these monsters to murder any more. He is truly remarkable. He should have already succumbed to those injuries, yet he still stands and fights on. Yamura extends his claws and moves to stand beside Hui. This has gone on far too long. He is too dangerous to be left alive. We must finish this. I fear that his power will continue to grow in his desperation. Absurd. He is merely drawing on his life energy to continue. As soon as that is spent, he will cease to be an obstacle to us, Hui argues. Enkidu fights to remain conscious. Yamura's Seal Accelerator ability has allowed him to continuously regenerate any sustained damage while he fatigues. A handful of tattoos remain on the Sakari, but they are more than enough to remain in control of a 2-on-1 fight. Enkidu's head drops forwards and his eyes close, but he quickly shakes it off. You will not survive this, Hui says, he and Yamura both manifesting orbs of energy and shoving them together to form a single mass of violently spinning destruction. Unable to dodge, Enkidu is hit by the blast and strewn to the ground. Smoke rises from the warrior's body, and he does not move. Finally, Hui says, sighing loudly. Suddenly, Yamura slashes him across the chest. What? Hui whispers, falling back, with blood trailing from his wound. In this world, I am no longer bound by the rules of our king, Yamura says, turning his gaze to the magicians. Finish closing the portal. Brother, how dare you, Inyana screams, tugging at her chains with fury. Soon the humans will be nothing more than a memory, a blackened blemish on the history of this world. I will not, however, do any more to increase the power or stature of Marduk. Let the other lords conquer him. I am no longer his slave. Inyana begins to scream, You will pay for your treachery. Dear sister, you will not report this. When the portal is closed, I will allow the humans to kill you. Enkidu crawls to his feet and shakily fixes his sword on Yamura. Yamura begins to laugh. You are at death's door. Victory cannot be found in your condition. I will not give up. I will fight you to my last breath, Enkidu says. Yamura leaps at Enkidu, slashing at him with his claws. Enkidu blocks with his sword, but the sheer force knocks him to the ground. Behind them, the ground shakes violently as magical chains wrap around the portal and tighten it. Quickly, the fissure vanishes from existence. It is finished. Your allies have done me a tremendous service. With the portal closed, nothing can be reported back to Marduk. This world will be mine to rule alone. You are a murderer, and you will pay for your crimes, Enkidu shouts. It is not murder, it is conquest. Your petty human gods do not rule me. I will forge my own path. Enkidu rushes Yamura with renewed strength. The Creator rules all worlds, even yours. Yamura is forced on the defensive, as Enkidu's sword slashes become faster and stronger. Fearing his opponent's unpredictable surges of power, Yamura channels the remainder of his tattoos and breaks through Enkidu's defenses. With his full power released, Yamura cuts down across Enkidu's chest. Blood sprays outwards as the warrior falls to his knees. You fought bravely. I have never battled anyone such as you before. Yamura freezes, feeling cold steel piercing his side. He looks down to see Hui's sword sticking from his torso. Bastard! Hui coughs, barely conscious as he holds his arm outstretched. Hui, you fool! Yamura growls and turns to face him. Hui raises his other hand and fires a burst of energy past Yamura. Finish this, my queen, Hui says, collapsing to the ground just as his energy blast slams into Refugio's chest and sends him sprawling backwards. Inyana rips free from her chains, lunging forwards and raking her claws across Refugio's throat as he falls. Instead of blood, dirt particles separate from the magician's throat. His body hits the ground and becomes dust. Inazu Marastra, Refugio chants from behind, electrocuting Inyana with a surge of lightning from his fingertips. Yamura holds his hand to his side, trying to stop the bleeding by focusing his energy on the wound. Damn Hui, he has cut me deeply. I do not know how much longer I can continue to fight in this condition, Yamura thinks. Hui lifts his head off the ground. His vision is clouded, and his body is aflame with pain. He sees Inyana on her hands and knees, gasping for breath, as Refugio floods her again with lightning magic. He forces himself back onto his feet. I cannot allow my queen to be killed by these primates. Even if I must sacrifice my own life, I must protect her. Hui taps into his life energy, rushing to Inyana's side and slashing at Refugio. The magician erects a barrier at the last second, blocking Hui's claws with a pinkish red-colored shield. Inyana shakily looks up at her protector in admiration and confusion. Go! Save yourself, my queen! Hui screams, slashing at Refugio again and again. Inyana, in desperation, runs away. She runs past the other magicians, dodging several bursts of magical flames and binding chains. Lascaux moves to intercept her, chanting quickly to increase his own speed to match hers. Inyana pivots, slashing through the magician's throat. As Lascaux falls back, trailing blood, Elamachus rushes in with a conjured spear. Inyana shatters the weapon and thrusts her hand through his chest. Fausto's eyes widen in horror as he witnesses his allies falling all around him. One by one, Inyana smiles. One by one you will fall. None of you will escape my wrath. No more, Fausto screams. No more killing. You demons have taken everything away from us. I will not let you commit any more evil. He throws his arms out in front of him and begins to chant rapidly. What can you do that you have not already tried? Inyana taunts. Your magics are nowhere near strong enough to threaten me. You are only wasting your breath and your stamina. Yisali, Kibot, Fausto screams. The ground in front of Inyana erupts into flames, blocking her path. An inhuman howl echoes from within the flames as a massive clawed hand reaches out to grab the Sicarii. What? Inyana shouts in pain and surprise as the hand squeezes her tightly. She tries to break free, but the hand is imbued with a dark power that is beyond her. Red eyes peer from the flames. The beast's hand draws back. "No!" Inyana screams, clawing at the ground and fighting with everything she has to resist being dragged across the battlefield towards the flames. Enkidu awakens, witnessing Inyana being pulled into the abyss and disappearing. Her screams echo loudly from the ground, even after she has vanished from sight. What was that spell? Enkidu wonders. Fausto drops to a knee, clutching his chest. He turns towards Enkidu and smiles. The color drains from the man's skin, and he begins to look even more thin and frail. "It is up to you, my friend," Fausto whispers, his body becoming ash, scattering in the wind, and his robe dropping to the ground. "Fausto!" Enkidu screams, reaching out in vain. Yamura trembles as he watches his sister pulled down into the abyss. That human offered his own life as a tribute to banish Inyana. Better her than me. Now only 2 magicians remain in my way. Yamura calms himself and begins to chant. Enkidu stands up. A vortex of blue energy whips around him. His hair stands on end, and his eyes glow with rage. His anger has tapped into the bloodline of his ancestors, and allowed him access to a small fraction of power of the Yazata. Fausto, Yasion, Amastus, Taraxime, Lascaux, Ismail, Elamaches. So many have died. I've failed to protect any of them. "What are you?" Yamura backs away in fear, sensing an energy seeming no longer human, but that of the 2 Yazata who murdered his father. Enkidu materializes inches from Yamura's face, connecting with a devastating punch. Yamura tumbles backwards, skidding across the ground. He throws a hand out to stop himself, but the momentum spins him around and he rolls over his side several times. As he finally ceases movement, Enkidu is already atop him. Yamura's eyes widen, and he's unable to react before Enkidu's fist strikes deep into his sternum. Blood explodes from his mouth, and an impact crater swells out around them from the force. Enkidu's fist is driven down into Yamura's chest again and again. The Sakari's bones are crushed, and he screams out in agony. He lifts his right hand to try and defend, but Enkidu brings his sword down across Yamura's wrist. A blood-curdling scream bellows from deep within the Sakari, and blood sprays from his severed wrist in a steady stream. Enkidu stabs his sword downwards, deep into Yamura's chest. The blade hits a rib and becomes lodged, preventing his heart or lungs from being pierced. Yamura coughs, choking on his own blood. How have I allowed myself to die like this? He is but a human. He should not have been able to have defeated me. Enkidu tugs to pull his sword free, but it catches on the bone and will not dislodge. Yamura bucks his body up and tosses the warrior to his back. He stands up slowly. The blessed sword Tiavan remains stuck in his chest. "You have done the unthinkable, and the damage you have dealt to me. Never before have I been so severely wounded in battle." Yamura begins to glow with a faint red light. "Unfortunately for you, my sister has inadvertently left me a gift in her haste to escape." Yamura finishes the chant he begun earlier, drawing the spirits of Elamaches and Lascaux into his own aura. 2 tattoos materialize on his chest. Yamura pulls Enkidu's sword from him and grins as he calls upon Seal Asalair to close up the wound. "It required both of their energies to heal my stab wound," Yamura says, looking down at his mutilated arm. "I do not have enough energy to heal my arm. It truly has been an honor battling a fighter of your caliber." Enkidu tenses, struggling to think of anything he can do to stop the Sakari that is once again rejuvenated. He glances at his sword, and Yamura's gaze is also then drawn towards it. "Do you want this back?" Yamura asks, staring at the angelic blade. He tosses it to the ground. "Come and get it, if you are brave enough." I cannot defeat him. The more I wear down and become injured, the more he continues to find ways to recover. My only hope lies in Fausto. Enkidu runs forward and dives to the ground. Yamura expects him to go for his sword, but instead he leaps for the dead magician's remains. Enkidu dives for Fausto's robe and, with relief, grabs hold of the sealing discs. I am not strong enough to win this battle with my strength alone. My only chance is to put my faith in the Creator and in magic. If Refugio is correct, the jeweled discs should be strong enough to hold even Yamura. If I am incorrect, I die, and all of Katal-Takuk falls with me, Enkidu thinks. "What are you waiting for, human?" Yamura grins. "Hoping to find some spell in your dead friend's pockets that will save you? Allow me to impart this knowledge to you. If your friend had a spell strong enough to stop me, he would have already utilized it. You are desperate, but your faith and hope is misplaced. Nothing will save you from this fate. The bonds we humans form are not meaningless. I will put my hope in my friends, and I will not give up. I will stand against you until my last breath," Enkidu says, gripping the discs tightly.